half 100 on them at Owen Field, or the run rules on the diamond at Love's Field. We're giving you the breakdowns, the bets, and the hot takes from the perspective of two former OU Athletics employees. You're listening to the Mainline Podcast with Tyler Burton and Adam Jaquez.
Let's go! Let's go! Go!
Let's go. Welcome to the Mainline. I'm Adam Jaquez. He's Tyler Burton. SEC Media Day has officially now come and gone for the Oklahoma Sooners. We heard from Brent Venables. We heard from Danny Stutsman, Jackson Arnold, and Billy Bowman, as well as everyone else that was there, all their opinions on Oklahoma. And we're here to kind of react, break down what we heard, and just cover the football program as we are, a month and a half away from the very first football game. Tyler, how are you this evening?
Adam, is Oklahoma ready for the SEC? Like, are they actually ready for the onslaught? What's coming their way? Is Oklahoma truly prepared and ready for what's about to be laid in front of them here in just a couple months' time? No. It feels like I know that all the players and Coach Venables were sick and tired of answering that same question. It kind of feels like every single team's head coach and the players, basically all week long, the last couple of days, and it'll continue to be so over the next couple of days as well. That's been one of the biggest focal points. That's been one of the biggest talking points has been based around the fact that Oklahoma and Texas are joining this conference. Are they ready are they truly equipped to handle what's about to be laid out there in front of them? But no, Adam, things are good up here in Denver. It's been a little hot, been a little rainy over the last couple of days, but things are good. Obviously, once you get to media days for your conference, that's really kind of the unsung beginning part of the college football season. I'm excited that we finally reached that point today. I thought that was ultimately kind of the premier day down in Dallas. Obviously, the best collection of teams and storylines all together under one roof on the same day. Georgia kicking it off this morning. Obviously, Kirby Smart, Carson Beck. Georgia, obviously the favorite in the SEC and one of the favorites again for the national championship. We did have a few good things kind of come off when Kirby Smart took the podium. Obviously, kind of a little bit of a shot at Dan Lanning not having access to the Phil Knight NIL money. That's obviously a huge tool that Oregon's kind of has at their disposal right now. That's paying huge dividends for the Ducks right now. Tennessee was part of the conversation as well. Josh Heupel, a lot of questions about the upward trajectory that he's got the Vols on right now. The excitement around Nico at quarterback, and it was interesting, Adam, getting to hear kind of some of his first responses and thoughts on getting a chance to come back to Owen Field this upcoming September and what's going to be the best atmosphere in Norman in a long, long time. Missouri, a lot of belief around Columbia that this is the year that they can be one of the 12 teams in the college football playoff and a dark horse contender in the SEC. Brady Cook, Luther Burden coming back. They had some big-time additions in the portal. Expectations are high for Mizzou. And then you've got little old Oklahoma coming into this program. You've got the new kid on the block making our first appearance at SEC Media Days. It was great to hear from Brent Venables, Jackson Arnold, Danny Stutsman, Billy Bowman. And Adam, I thought that for the first time in a long time, there was actually some intrigue around football media days this year, particularly within the SEC. There was, new teams, new coaches, new players. It was, kind of a new experience for Oklahoma. Unlike the past couple of decades within the Big 12. I just didn't get that same type of excitement level from Big 12 Media Days. We all knew that it was Oklahoma, 9 times out of 10. They were the preseason favorite to win the Big 12 championship trophy. There really wasn't any insight or really any excitement or intrigue on what was Kansas State or what was Iowa State. What were they going to be bringing to the table for this upcoming year? It was kind of the same song, different verse each and every season. But now that we are a part of the SEC and you are getting to hear from some of the other coaches, some of the other programs that Oklahoma's going to be battling against week in and week out, that's where the intrigue comes into play. And it was a lot of fun, and we've got some good things to discuss tonight.
Yeah, there's definitely more intrigue, but at the same time, it's almost more boring because you get the same questions over and over and over again that we've been talking about for years now, really, which is, like you mentioned, is Oklahoma SEC ready? I'm sick and tired of that. What games are you looking forward to going to? Jackson Arnold being asked about going to Ole Miss or going to Auburn. What's it going to be like playing in other people's stadiums? I'm sick and tired of that. Like, those teams have to come to Oklahoma. Those teams have been talking about how Oklahoma's not used to the SEC. Well, those teams aren't used to playing Oklahoma. So I'm kind of sick and tired of that. I'm ready for this season to get kicked off because it's just a constantly and we went through it last offseason in terms of oh, Texas has way, gone past OU. They won 49-0 last year. Brent Venables is washed. Oklahoma's new Nebraska. And then we kind of came out, I think, proved a lot of those narratives wrong in 2023. But yet we still don't get the respect for it. We still aren't getting any respect. We're basically, I think the Las Vegas win totals way back and whenever that came out, March, April, that's just set the tone. Everyone's determined that it's done. No reason to play the games. Ole Miss, Missouri are better than Oklahoma. I'm sick and tired of it. I felt like at media days, there was a lot of conversation really around how much tougher it's going to be for Oklahoma and not as much about, kind of the basics that you usually get out of these media days, which is who's performing well, which freshmen look good, things like that I'm actually kind of curious about that are, I think, more interesting to me at this point than rehashing we're going to go to Auburn for the first time ever.
There was a lot of conversation and really got started yesterday morning. Nick Saban on the set of SEC Now with ESPN. They really kind of got things kicked off talking about, the arrogance level of the Texas fan base and how Texas, they're Texas is coming into this, Adam, under the impression that they're going to come in and automatically be on the same level as Georgia and Alabama. Where they're getting that type of expectation, I'm not sure. It does kind of go back to the fact that it is the most arrogant fan base in collegiate athletics right now. Everything is bigger in Texas, including the ego. But I thought that it was interesting, and I know that you were kind of alluding to this. Nick Saban brought up the fact that it's because of the arrogance level. Texas thinks that just like in the Big 12, they're going to come in and run things in the SEC the same way that they've been doing for the last 25 years. Well, I think that people simply forgot, or they're just choosing to look the other way and not pay attention to actual record books or statistics. Oklahoma has ran the Big 12 conference for the last 25 plus years. So
did you take that as on the field running the Big 12? Because I took it as more of off the field. That's how I took it.
I think that a lot of people, especially on social media, when you put a small, little tidbit, you take it out of context. Many people will possibly think that this has to do with Texas is going to run the show on the football field. They're going to automatically come in and be the top dog in the SEC. I kind of took it as more along the lines of Chris Del Conte, the boosters, the administration down there in Austin. They think that they're just going to come in and start calling the shots on what happens throughout this conference. So I was kind of a lot more in line with that thinking, with where you're coming from here. But make no mistake about it, I think that the arrogance level that probably does pour into the play on the field as well. They think that Texas, we're coming off of the best year that we've had since Colt McCoy was wearing the burnt orange. They think that just because they made the college football playoff, that ultimately gives them a higher leg to stand on, and they think that they're going to be able to come in and run the show in the SEC. It's just simply not the case.
In contrast to Texas's arrogance, and they haven't had their media day yet, so we'll see what they come out and say. But just we know that fan base, we know that team, we know that program. That's kind of how they operate. Oklahoma, I think, and Brent Venables' tone in SEC media days was a little bit more quiet confidence, I think, is how I would portray it. He wasn't as lengthy in his answers or his press conference as he normally is. But I think he set the tone pretty early and often that, hey, like, we're not intimidated as a program. We're running toward the SEC.
Yep.
And I kind of think about that of like, Oklahoma, if the team is buying into that, we're running toward the SEC. How immovable of an object is Ole Miss or Missouri, because they're already there. They're already there in the SEC. Yeah. They may be running toward Oklahoma, but I wonder if that type of mentality and thinking ends up helping Oklahoma quite a bit in year one.
We've grown. We've listened to everything that Brent Venables has said since he came off the plane back in Norman, Oklahoma 3 years ago, and I think that a lot of people that are familiar with Brent Venables in a press conference setting, there's a lot of long-winded answers. It feels like every single question that is asked of Brent thinks that it's an open-ended question that he can then go on a 5 or 10 minute tangent, which is absolutely fantastic from a journalism standpoint, because he gives you a lot of content to be able to write stories, generate conversation, kind of like what we're doing right now. But I thought that Brent's performance up at the podium today was about as good and impressive as what we've seen from Brent Venables since he's been back as the head ball coach at the University of Oklahoma. He was clear, he was concise, humbly confident, I think would be the best phrase that I would use to determine Brent's, his overall projection of his team, of his program, of his university going into year one of the SEC. And I think that, he made a really good point. Oklahoma isn't intimidated as a football program. We're not running away from the SEC. We're not tiptoeing our way into the SEC. We're running full steam ahead 100 miles an hour into this brand new conference. And, there's a lot of people out there that are, operating under the assumption, is Oklahoma going to be able to deal with the SEC? Is Oklahoma ready for what's coming in this brand new conference. Well, last time I checked, Oklahoma was one of the top 5 programs in college football history that has done nothing but win national championships and conference championships and, generate All-Americans and Heisman Trophy winners. The level of expectation at the University of Oklahoma is not like 90% of the schools in this conference. I don't care what they tell you. Oklahoma is right up there in the same level of expectation, same level of prestige, honor, and overall commitment to excellence. Playing football at this level, so this is going to be nothing new. And I'll just throw this back to you, Adam. It's not just that OU has to deal with the SEC, but the SEC is going to have to deal with Oklahoma.
Yeah. You talk about commitment, and it was Jay Smith from Locked On Sooners that asked Brent a question about just the overall roster makeup. And there was one time that Brent did kind of go on a lengthy answer and go in lots of different directions there. But he did say, hey, our commitment has to be higher than our potential. And that's a phrase that Brent has used in the past. I hadn't heard it in a while, but I really like that mentality and that thinking, because he also talked about how, we replaced basically 75 scholarship players within the first 15 months of arriving at Oklahoma. And at some places, if you're at Colorado and you're Deion Sanders, for example, or if you're at Arizona State and you're Kenny Dillingham, that's probably a good thing if you're replacing 75 scholarship players. At a place like Oklahoma and the way Lincoln left things, it probably, maybe there are some positions you were able to upgrade, but a lot of positions you're probably just trying to hang on, because at Oklahoma, you're already at a very high level. So using the transfer portal is not how you want to build a program like Oklahoma. It might work better at someone like Arizona State, for example. So I thought that was an interesting answer. And we talked a lot last offseason around, hey, year 2, lots of coaches have big bumps in year 2. We did see that. We went from 6 wins to 10 wins. But I almost wonder if year 1 of Brent Venables, maybe it wasn't year 0, but maybe it was like year half, for example. And maybe the bigger bump is coming here in year 3. Maybe that doesn't mean more wins, but a better quality of play across the board with his roster, with everything installed the way he wants it to be.
It's a better quality of play, and it's getting back to the brand of football that brought so many championships and a level of excellence to Oklahoma. It's it's that dominant, physical, punishing, relentless, suffocating defense that Brent Venables brought back to Oklahoma in the early 2000s with Mike Stoops and Bob. But I do think that Brent's looking at this thing on like a 5-6 year plan, where whenever he got to Oklahoma with what he inherited, the way that the program was built, the way that the roster was built, from a, position by position breakdown, where a lot of the focus was based on, the skill talent on offense, and not as much focus was put on the defensive side of the football, because Lincoln Riley knew that he, just simply, if he could go out there and score 45 plus points, he was going to win 9 out of every 10 ball games that he was in. It just so happened that the 10th ball game that he lost was the one that actually meant something once you found your way into the college football playoff. But I do think that Brent, the impression that I got, Adam, and it was there was a sense of pride and a level of proudness with watching Brent. I was very, I don't want to say taken back, but watching Brent speak and the way that he answered those questions and the way that he conducted himself, showing that level of confidence, I was very excited and very thankful and proud that Brent Venables is representing the University of Oklahoma, and he's the captain of the ship that is Oklahoma football. So I thought that Brent did a phenomenal job, and I thought that he really did a good job of presenting that united front, with President Harris and Joe Castiglione and Brent Venables, kind of that dominant trio that has made Oklahoma so good for the last 25 years, where there's everybody has been in unison, everybody's been on the same path, moving in the same direction, fighting for one common goal. And I thought that Brent Venables did a fantastic job today of, putting his best foot forward, and he got Oklahoma off on the right foot.
Yeah, I think there's definitely the word that I would describe Brent is measured at this stage in his head coaching career. He's always been very detailed and very focused on, but really too many areas. But now it feels like his scope of focus is a little bit narrower. And we know that where you put your focus, it'll yield results. So I think we saw a lot of really good, just overall head coach maturity out of Brent so far. And let's see if that translates onto the field.
You're continuing to see Brent Venables evolve as a coach. It's clear as night and day whenever he stepped off the plane, kind of had his initial press conference. I don't want to say that he was essentially a deer in the headlights, but you can tell with him going into year 3, now that he's been a part of this for the last, 36 months, He knows exactly what he's got to do. He's comfortable with where he's at Oklahoma. He knows that this is the trajectory, this is the path that we've got to follow to get back to the top of the mountain, which is where Oklahoma, rightfully belongs. That's where that they need to be when you look at the long track record of this program. And I just thought that the quiet confidence that he kind of portrayed today with the way that he answered the questions, and he talked about the fact that Oklahoma going into year 3 of Brent Venables, they've now got 24 to 25 guys that are going to be going into their 3rd year at Oklahoma playing for Brent Venables. So they know the scheme. They know the level of expectation. They know what it takes to be able to live up to that brand and that style of play that Brent Venables is coaching. But then he also talked about the fact, too, that he's got 50-plus guys at the same time that are either going into their 1st or 2nd year at the University of Oklahoma. So that's where we talk about the roster turnover and, continuing to change the overall layout of how this roster is built, from the inside out. That's what Brent Venables is trying to do. You build it from your offense and your defensive lines, and then you stack the skill players around it. And I think that Brent Venables, he's continuing to do that, especially with what's coming in the 2025 class as they look to close that out here over the next couple of months.
One player that Brent had a lot of confidence in is Jackson Arnold. And I'll have the audio clip play here. It's not the best of audio quality, but I thought it was important to hear what Brent had to say specifically around how there's going to be ups and downs this season, but he's really confident in Jackson Arnold's ability to navigate those.
What I feel best about and have the most peace about is his ability to be able to handle the highs and the lows, the challenges, the success, the failure that a season will bring you. Nobody is more competent or more ready. Now, even though he's a young player, and we've got to, in some ways, be the headlights for him. That's why they call us coach. But his skill, his arm talent, his toughness, his instincts, his ability to lead people, bring out the best in people, no question about it. He's ready for his opportunity in his moment.
And I think a big part of that moment and that opportunity for Jackson Arnold was to come to SEC Media Days. There really isn't a whole lot of other options to put out in front of the media from the offensive side of the ball. I guess you could go Farouk or Anderson potentially, or even Gavin Sawchuk. But yeah, I thought it was a moment and a sign to the rest of the team. I'm sure they have tons of confidence in Jackson Arnold, but it's a sign to show the rest of the team, here's your leader. Everyone get behind Jackson Arnold. And I thought he presented himself well. Nothing really super interesting that he was asked necessarily or any interesting answers, but sometimes boring is good. Like no controversy created.
Adam, watching Jackson Arnold go through his different media obligations and listening to some of the things that he said when answering those questions, it kind of goes back to what we talked about on who's Oklahoma going to send to this. We knew it was going to be Stutsman. We knew it was going to be Billy Bowman. Do you choose to, go the safe route by taking a Jacob Sexton or a Gavin Sawchuk, Jalil Farouk, guys that have been in the program for a while? Or do you choose to go with kind of, the new face of your program for the next 2 to 3 years now? And it makes me think of the Coach Taylor quote from Friday Night Lights. Doesn't matter how old you are, quarterback is a captain. So with Jackson Arnold, him being able to be in this type of setting where you've got dozens or hundreds of cameras and microphones in your face, everybody's wanting to know what you're going to say. That's kind of par for the course. That's what comes with playing quarterback at the University of Oklahoma. So I thought that it was good that even though he's only started one career game, which was the Alamo Bowl last December, the fact that he was able to get out there in this setting, it was nice to hear some of the things. And he also had that quiet level of confidence that you could just tell that he's really excited about this upcoming season, both from some of the venues that he's going to get to go play in, which it felt like every other question was asked about, which stadium are you excited to go play?
Who cares?
Who cares? He's excited to play in all of them. Oklahoma going to a new venue. It's going to be a lot of fun week in and week out, but it was really interesting to look at how excited Jackson Arnold was when talking about the stable of running backs at his disposal, talking about the playmakers that he's got at the wide receiver position, which is arguably probably collectively the best wide receiver core in the SEC outside of, Ole Miss could possibly make a claim for that as well. But obviously there are going to be some growing pains with Jackson Arnold. Ultimately, this is going to be his freshman season playing quarterback at this position. There's going to be some highs. There's going to be some lows, but I thought that Brent said it best. When you look at what this kid possesses, both from a skill as a quarterback and a leader, the arm talent, the toughness, the grit, he has all the tools and the capability. He is well equipped to be able to take this thing head on and lead Oklahoma to where they want to go. Now, there's going to be some bad moments. Don't get me wrong. He's a 19-year-old kid playing quarterback at the University of Oklahoma, and you're one of the SEC, but you're going to see far more rays of sunshine than you will dark and cloudiness. So, again, it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun to watch, but it was good getting to hear from Jackson Arnold today, talk about his teammates and where he's looking to play football this fall.
Yeah, I think we definitely expect those ups and downs. And it's good to hear that Brent's kind of identified that early. And I think that tells me that Jackson Arnold is specifically like mentally preparing for those downs.
Yeah.
And it's good to hear that Brent is saying, yeah, like he's the guy that's going to be able to handle that because you are going to experience that. So I love that answer from him. We also got some great answers from Billy Bowman. I know a lot of focus was around the whole horns down thing. Who cares on that, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. I thought what was more interesting and probably more endearing to the Oklahoma fan base was the question that was asked of him, which was, why did you decide to come back to Oklahoma? And here was his answer.
Ultimately, I want to win a national championship. I know before I came here, Oklahoma won, 6, 7 conference championships in a row. Since I've been here, I haven't been to one. So my goal is to win championships. Ultimately, we went to the college football playoffs 4 times also. I haven't been there either. So that's something I want to check off too. But ultimately, coming back, getting my degree, so I won't have to worry about it in the future life. And then also, I'm still a college student athlete. Why rush the next stage of my life? It's going to be there. So coming back, having this time to, spend with my teammates and things like that, it's why I came back.
Brent Venables was also asked about why Danny Stutsman returned. He said that Danny had an excellent NFL draft grade. He had plenty of guys that have taken that on and gone off to the NFL, but Danny was someone who wanted to be one of the leaders to take us into the SEC. So very similar messaging there around why both those guys are returning. I think there's a very clear focus, and Danny Stutsman and Billy Bowman, I felt like both had a very kind of that same intentionality around what they were doing. These guys are very experienced, very senior on this team. And there's a lot of focus on, we're getting the playoffs, we're going to try to win a championship. And you love to hear that because this team, and Brent talked about the leadership on the team. We'll talk about that here in a second, but it sounds like, they have a ton of confidence in who they are, who their identity is, what type of brand of football they're going to play. And you just heard that, I think, in spades from Billy Bowman and Danny Stutsman.
They're confident in who they are as football players. And obviously, these are 2 guys that are both All-Americans. They're going to be atop, the preseason awards, up and down the list from every single media outlet across the country as this thing continues to get closer and closer to kickoff. But I think the word that comes to mind when you listen to Billy and you listen to Danny talk about why they came back to the University of Oklahoma for one final year, and we talk about the draft grades that both of these guys got. These are both guys that could have been, possibly a day 2, NFL draft pick, but you have an opportunity to come back now and lead this program into the SEC, have an opportunity to test yourself and continue to put more and more game tape on the field against the other, the best quote unquote competition in the country. It's a huge risk, but also at the same time, these guys are extremely confident in their abilities. They're one of the top 2-3 safeties, top 2-3 linebackers in all of college football. They know what they've signed up for. They know what they're getting themselves into. And the word that comes to mind when you listen to Brent talk about both of these guys and why they made the decision to come back, the word that comes to mind is legacy. That they both had an opportunity to, take the money, take the early exit out, go to the NFL, start playing on Sundays this upcoming fall. But they wanted to be the 2 guys on this Oklahoma defense that, continue what Brent Venables has done over the last couple of seasons. They want to be the 2-headed monster that leads Oklahoma into the SEC and gets this program off on the right foot in the inauguration season. And I think that it talks about who they are as players. It talks about who they are as people. But I think that also it even says more about their love for the University of Oklahoma and how much they love this program and how much they love Coach Venables and this coaching staff as a whole. And the fact that Oklahoma is very fortunate to be able to go into year 1 of the SEC, having Billy, having Danny to, kind of lead the charge. Oklahoma is very fortunate. I think that it's going to pay huge dividends for this football team going forward.
Yeah, not very many teams are able to bring 2 All-Americans to SEC Media Days. I think Georgia probably is doing that. But outside of that, probably Oklahoma has the most All-Americans that they brought to the media days. Doesn't mean as a team they're going to have the most, but I think that shows that the high-end talent on Oklahoma can stack up against pretty much anybody in the conference. They just need to have more of that high-end talent. So, I agree. I think there's a lot of focus there, and we also heard some good things from Danny Stutsman too. There were some good answers around several different things, but I think what stood out to me the most was what he had to say about one of the newest additions to the defense, which is the defensive tackle, Dominic Williams, who came up from TCU.
That dude's legs are massive, man. It's like 2 of mine or 1 of his, and he's going to be a great player for us, man. I think he's came in right away. It kind of takes us a little bit, but now he's kind of earned that respect in the group. You kind of look at him, you see a natural leader. It's a guy that, the system takes a second. Now he's really starting to get it, throughout the summer. He's taking every single day. He's kind of helping, lead the group, help those younger guys, and it's a great addition for that defense.
I thought we also heard some really great things from Stutsman around how he wants to be a leader, how he's really shepherding that linebacker room as well. And so there's another continuation, just in parallel to what Brent Venables is doing at the head coach position, but Stutsman on that defense, maturing constantly year over year. I had no problems with, the way he finished last year, but I feel like he's taken a bigger step forward just as a leader, as someone who's, a young man, so on and so forth. Like, he's just taken another step forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's what you want out of your best players, and especially out of a guy that chose to forgo his final year of eligibility to go to the NFL. He decided to come back to, continue under the tutelage of Brent Venables and Zach Galli. And I think that, another year in this system, another year with Jerry Schmidt, with his level of experience, he's only going to get better going into his final season in an Oklahoma uniform. And I thought that he did say some really good things talking about the young guys at the linebacker position for, Jaron Canick, Lewis Carter, Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie. What a difference a couple of years makes when you talk about the overall talent and, projecting what this linebacking core is going to be able to do production wise over the next couple of seasons with, how well that they've recruited. And, Brent Venables, the best linebacker coach in college football, continuing to develop his guys when he gets them on campus. So the fact that you've got Danny, back for one more season, the fact that he's going to be a guy, that Lewis Carter or a Kip Lewis are going to be able to look to and watch how this guy operates, how he conducts himself, how he gets himself, mentally and physically ready for game days on Saturday. That's going to pay huge dividends, not just for this season, but for the next couple of years down the road when those guys are actually the ones starting those games and playing those meaningful reps. And, the thing about Dominic Williams, and again, there was a lot of talk about this kid with the overall recruitment, going back and forth between Texas, Oklahoma, LSU. And it was such a huge deal when Oklahoma was able to capture this kid's signature. But ever since that, talk's been a little bit quiet. When you start talking about preseason awards, All-American list, different things like that, Dominic Williams' name has kind of fallen on deaf ears a little bit. But I think that he is very similar to Danny Stutsman when you talk about he's a guy that has All-American capabilities, but he's also a guy that's played a ton of college football. If he has the type of season that we expect him to, he's probably only going to be at Oklahoma for the next 5 or 6 months. But even more so, his impact on the football field from a production standpoint, he has the opportunity to take a guy like Jaden Jackson and David Stone under his wing to show them, hey, this is what it takes. This is how you do it. This is ultimately what you have to do to be successful at Division I, high level football. So again, Dominic Williams, Danny Stutsman, Billy Bowman, you'd be hard pressed to find, maybe outside of a couple of teams, somebody as dominant at all 3 levels of the defense. And Oklahoma's going to have one of those at each unit this fall.
Overall, talking about the leadership of the team, I thought Brent Venables said something pretty strong about the 3 guys that he brought to Dallas: Jackson Arnold, Billy Bowman, and Danny Stutsman, saying that that's the strongest group of leaders that he's had in his years at Oklahoma. I'm assuming he means going back to 1999 and when he was defensive coordinator. I assume that's what he meant. If he did,
probably not.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So either way, I mean, over the last 3 years, I think that's pretty strong, especially considering that Jackson Arnold will be a first-time starter this year. So, I think you need that type of leadership when you're entering a new conference and having a lot of change and a lot of distraction. And case in point, like all the questions about going to other people's stadiums and which teams you might play and not necessarily anything about on the field. Like there's just tons of distractions. So you need that strong leadership in place.
The best programs in college football are player-led. I think that that's something that Brent Venables has really harped on over the last few seasons. Anytime that he's been asked about the level of leadership and accountability has been another word that he's really talked about. That's been a huge focal point that he's trying to, that's a huge quality that he's trying to build in these guys. From the time that they step foot on campus as freshmen to when they leave, you've got the ability to lead, you've got the ability to be accountable on and off the field. And I think that it does say a lot, Adam, when you've got essentially a true freshman as part of the this leadership core that Brent Venables is so highly or is so high on. And I think that that's something that is going to be good for Oklahoma this upcoming fall, because there's going to be some challenges. Make no mistake about it. With the difficulty of this schedule from top to bottom, the SEC did these guys no favors whatsoever outside of the group down in Austin, where they kind of got the cupcake side of it. But yeah, you're going to have to rely on Jackson Arnold. You're going to have to rely on Billy and Danny, because there's going to be some dark moments this upcoming season. Gone are the days where you've got the most talent every single time that you line up on Saturdays. Oklahoma's probably going to be the most talented team outside of 3-4 games this fall. Texas, Alabama, maybe LSU. I don't know. You have to go back and look at the class rankings and a little bit of that blue chip ratio that Adam so desperately loves. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And the crazy part about it is, Adam, as good as I feel about this football team right now, and as much as that is going to continue to increase as we get closer to kickoff, this could be the best team that Brent Venables has had in his 3 years in Norman, and they could still go 8-4 because of how difficult the schedule is. So again, there's a lot of other factors that go into more than just wins and losses and determining, how good or, how well or how productive of a season this is going to be for Oklahoma. It's a pretty damn tough schedule. Oklahoma's got their work cut out for them.
A few final tidbits that we learned earlier today at SEC Media Days. This one coming 2 updates from George Stoya on the injury front. There's some other guys he updated on, but I thought these were the 2 that stood out to me the most. Was Troy Everett being way ahead of schedule. He was one that had an injury back during spring practice. We thought he might be out until maybe the first game or so, but it sounds like he could be back earlier, which that produces tremendous versatility for the offensive line. He's a guy that has started, I think, 12 games in his career between App State and Oklahoma. He could play center. He could play guard. So that allows him to push Branson Hickman potentially for that center spot, or maybe take over at left guard, which is pretty wide open. That's one position that we've maybe had the hardest time predicting who might end up there. But if Troy Everett is available, maybe he's able to take over that position, which that could be a big one. And then Andrel Anthony, the wide receiver, sounds like he's relatively where we expect. That we're hopeful maybe he can be ready by the time the first game starts. But obviously it would take some time for him to, get fully worked into the offense at that point. But it's good to hear that it sounds like things are progressing as expected with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you talk about Troy Everett, in what was a pretty catastrophic injury, and Andre Anthony ultimately tearing his ACL in the Texas game, there was a lot of question about, are either of these guys going to be able to be ready for, the opening month of the season? And, by every indication right now, obviously it could be coach speak, but I think that Brent does as good a job as anybody as, being pretty straightforward with what's going on with his players and his program. So you're going to need both of these guys sometime throughout this year. The SEC, I think that that's probably been the most, the biggest commonality when you talk to, other sources, you talk to, other fan bases, the grind. And the wear and tear that it takes on your roster, and particularly your 2-man rotation at each position, going through a grueling SEC schedule. Oklahoma is going to be forced to rely on some backups throughout the course of the regular season. So the fact that Troy Everett is progressing very nicely, and he can be able to come back into the fold to whether it is to back up Branson Hickman or be a rotational piece at one of those interior guard spots, that's going to pay huge dividends. And Andrel Anthony, if he can get back to where he was, especially from a route running and a speed standpoint, he just adds to what is already the best wide receiving core in the SEC. The hard part for Andrel Anthony is going to be, I'm not so sure how he's going to be able to find his way onto the field, because you look at how deep Oklahoma is at Emmett Jones's position. I mean, this from inside and out, this position group is stacked. And, Emmett Jones, job well done. He's continuing to put together, elite wide receiving class. He's going to do it again here in a couple more months as well. But this says a lot. This is a really good thing that Oklahoma, things are starting to clear up a little bit on the injury front. Oklahoma's, in a good position going into fall camp.
Yeah, definitely need some depth. I know the wide receiver room looks stacked, and Andrew Anthony was the number one receiver through the first 6 games of last year or so. And hopefully no one gets injured, knock on wood, but you don't know when, your first or second leading receiver is going to go out like that. And you have to plug in someone. It'd be great to have Andrew Anthony for that. If he isn't, already up to full speed and taken over that number one spot again, which could be a possibility. It feels like a long shot considering the injury he had, but would love to see that if that were the case.
This is not SEC Media Day related, but from our time working in the athletic department, dealing with fans on a daily basis, this one does kind of this one is a little bit closer to home for each of us. Tailgating.
It's not going to change anything.
You sure?
No.
From everything that's out there, this is a game changer, Adam.
It was a game changer last year when they opened up Lindsay Street, and then like nobody was there the next game, and everyone complained, well, it was an 11 a.m. or it was hot. It's like we talk to fans, we know them, they don't want to renew. The games are too early, the games are too late, the games are too hot, the games are too cold. Like there's always something that fans don't want to do. I feel like if the culture was there for tailgating, people would have been packing out the areas that were available previously, and they weren't. So I think it's probably 5 years away from being actually what people want it to be. It's just not going to, the culture of the fan base is not going to turn around. So I know that's not a very popular thing to say, but I don't know. I feel like OU fans are mostly complainers. It's the reason that we don't have as many members in the Sooner Club as teams like Alabama or Ole Miss or other schools like that have far more donors that actually care about contributing financially to the program. It's just the way OU fans are. Like we're entitled. We complain a lot. We're kind of bandwagony in a way because we don't want to support the other programs like baseball that, if they're not going to win a championship, we don't care about it. So that's OU fans. I'm off my soapbox.
This is the year, and I know Oklahoma fans for, the better part of the last decade, pardon my French, but they've been bitching nonstop. Why are they not letting us tailgate at the stadium? There's not any good spots. How difficult it is to set things up and only be able to, be out there for a couple of hours and then go to the game and then have to tear it down. You got Tennessee, you got Alabama, you got South Carolina, and you got a few other non-conference games at home. If you don't show out this year, in year one of the SEC, when you've got arguably two of the premier programs in the SEC coming to Norman, Oklahoma, I don't want to hear anything about it. It's not ideal. It's not exactly what we want, but some leeway has been given. Some changes have been made to where if you really care about tailgating and creating an elite, home game atmosphere from a tailgating standpoint, this is the year to do it. So I don't want to hear any bitching. I don't want to hear any griping. This is the year to absolutely do it.
Yeah, let's make it happen. Anything else from SEC Media Days that you want to cover before we wrap for the day?
I don't think so. It was pretty much chalk. We didn't get anything, super off the wall. There wasn't any good sound bites that really, are going to aggravate anybody. I thought that maybe Missouri would be one. STI, yeah, that's. I had to go back and look up what Drinkowitz actually meant on that. But there's still some good stuff coming down the pipeline. Obviously, Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, Mike Elko at Texas A&M, and Sarkisian. They still have a couple more days left down there in Dallas to where they can have a chance to get out there in front of the microphone. But it's a hell of a lot of fun. I know that we're just 6 or 7 short weeks away from getting this thing going, and the guys are back on campus right now. Fall camp's going to get underway here in just a couple more weeks. So, Adam, it feels like we have the same conversation every single part of mid-July every year, where this off season it kind of flew by on us, and here we are time and time again coming off of another softball national championship. To where now it truly is football time in Oklahoma. So we're going to ride out the rest of this week with SEC Media Days. Fall camp's going to get underway here in just a couple more weeks, and we're going to look up, and Temple's going to be coming to town on Friday night. It's going to be a hell of a lot of fun.
And season 5 of the Mainline officially starts in August. So be 5 seasons of doing the show here, which will be pretty impressive.
And again, for all the listeners that have been out there since day one, any newcomers that have found their way over here to the channel, whether it's on whatever platform you consume your podcast, if you've joined and subscribed to the YouTube page, welcome. We try to put out the best level of content that we possibly can. I will say that for Adam and I, football season, that is our bread and butter. That's when the best content is going to be put out each and every week, sometimes a couple of podcasts each week, depending on the current state of the Oklahoma football season. So again, like, comment, subscribe, give us a 5-star review on wherever you're finding your platform for podcasts, wherever you're consuming your content. But yeah, let's wrap this thing up, Adam.
Yeah, appreciate everyone listening. We'll see everyone next week for the next episode of The Main Line.